Welcome to Wheel of Ezekiel Astrology. Today's presentation is inspired by a presentation astrologer Dan Waites did on his membership channel, World Astrology Report. I'm calling this one Uranus and the Threefold Outer Planet Cycle. I recently learned through watching this presentation that the outer planets have laid out this pattern, you could say, throughout history, though I'm only going to present a couple examples here that I got from watching the presentation of how Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto transiting a particular sign build off of each other, you could say. So let's just go ahead and get it right into it. Uranus has an 84-year cycle, spending about 7 years in each sign. Uranus as the awakener archetype. There's a distinction between the mythological and the astrological Uranus. This needs to be noted and understood. In astrology, Uranus embodies the Prometheus archetype much better than Uranus from mythology, where in the mythology, Uranus is overthrown by his son Kronos, who actually embodies the rebel archetype in that story. But in astrology, it kind of flips the other way around, and really it embodies a liberator archetype that is leading the rebellion rather than being deposed himself. So in a way, you could say Prometheus would have been a more fitting name for this planet, but Uranus will do as well, as long as those significations are kept in mind. So basically, through Uranus, humanity transcends the limitations of Saturn. This is literally the case because up until the discovery of Uranus, Saturn was the furthest planet that could be seen with the naked eye, and it was just assumed that Saturn was it. There was nothing else beyond Saturn. Saturn was the limit as far as one could go. So in regards to even, you could say, consciousness, our consciousness was just boxed in to just the realms of that Saturn ruled, which is the material world. So Uranus breaks through that, and essentially humanity can transcend those limitations and peer into the further mysteries of the universe, you could say. It has a very individual signification as well. One's personal emancipation and liberation, you could say. So the limits of what can be seen or measured essentially is what was being tested here. Going back to Saturn, this is also breaking away from established structures to transcend mental structures of purely material reality, and also to rebel against or question the status quo. Uranus archetypally could be seen as the rebel, the outsider, the inventor, the liberator. And its qualities are those of lightning, electricity, genius, and the software update to the era. It's very associated with technology. In some traditions of astrology, you could just say the more modern ones, just to note, my understanding is that they ascribe Uranus as the higher octave of Mercury. And so what's one way to think about it? I don't use that, but that's an interesting concept to entertain. I don't know if this is a whole hierarchy of octaves, but you could see it kind of as Mercury, but on a much higher level, you could say. Mercury has to do with just the kind of more of the day-to-day, mental. It's not as universal. I guess you could say Uranus is more of the universal mind. Okay, so let's see. Let's get to this threefold transit of the outer planets. Uh, so in order, Uranus will because it moves the quickest of the three outer planets. Uranus serves as the awakener. So it awakens, it inspires on an individual level. And then next, Neptune will come through. This is just any given sign or any given point in the zodiac. And Neptune has the quality of collectivizing, spiritualizing, and expanding what has been awakened. And then essentially brings about the dream, on a collective level. And then lastly, Pluto, the slowest of the outer planets, uh, empowers, weaponizes, and institutionalizes whatever has been done already by the archetypes of Uranus and Neptune. We can follow that. So, as I said already at the beginning, Uranus has an 84-year cycle. Neptune has a 165-year cycle. So it's 2 Uranus cycles per 1 Neptune cycle. And then Pluto has a 248-year cycle, which is 3 Uranus cycles to 1 Pluto cycle. So that's key because obviously Uranus will return to a sign in the case of Neptune 2 times, and in the case of Pluto 3 times. So it's something there to keep in mind when looking at this cycle as well. So this is my example of the threefold transit theme that I found most interesting. So on December 17th of 1903, Uranus is at 25 degrees of Sagittarius. This is the day the Wright brothers made their first successful extended flight. So this is conveying the themes of bringing the fire to the gods, so to speak, which is what Prometheus is credited with doing, which is, the fire of the gods is, knowledge, technology, you could say. So in this case, it's the technology of flight. Sagittarius is the sign associated with long distance travel. Uranus is providing the lightning flash moment of inspiration of what was possible. Up to that point, they tested, their glider and had many failed attempts, but this was the first attempt where they, I think, had over an hour consistent flight. So that's what I'm saying. This was the moment of inspiration of realizing that this could really work and they could really, really build upon this model, this invention, and long distance sustained flight could actually become a possible technology that that humanity could actually utilize in a reliable way. So that was this point. So then let's fast forward now to uh, the year 1978, October 24th. This is when Neptune is at 16 degrees Sagittarius. And on this day, US President Jimmy Carter signs the Airline Deregulation Act, which essentially, to my understanding, made it possible for airlines to be able to offer flights, I guess, on a more affordable price. It made it more accessible because prior to this point, I guess flying had been more of an exclusive thing, maybe more for an elite class, people that owned their own jet, or people that with a lot of money they could afford to buy an airline ticket. So flying becomes a more common thing from this point forward. Again, Neptune working off what Uranus already initiated 75 years prior. Again, collectivizing and making it more accessible to the masses. Okay, so fast forward a couple of decades, Pluto comes in to Sagittarius. This is on September 11th, 2001, which is a date that, of course, everybody knows. It's the day that the World Trade Center towers are attacked. So this is a very ominous, but quite literal manifestation of technology, in this case, the airplane becoming weaponized, technology taking on an extreme form, uh, bringing up life and death themes, and also exposing how even neutral tech innovation can be twisted by the psyche and used for evil. Pluto has a lot to do with the psyche, with the subconscious, and particularly with a lot of the darker, more malefic, hidden aspects of the psyche. And so, of course, this event ended up transforming flight and travel experience moving forward, with airport security being becoming what it is, well now, or at least right afterwards, it became quite an ordeal going through security. A lot of stuff that they got away with doing to ordinary citizens in the name of protecting the people. So, a huge power grab, which is also a Plutonian theme, of power. But going back to the point, you can kind of see here, even though it was a very long lapse of time, a technology that initiated way back in the early 1900s. Yep, 1903, all the way to 2001. And well, yeah, you can see how each planet kind of puts its own imprint onto this. Granted, yeah, there could be many other examples one could take, but just given the invention of the airplane and when it started, and then and it's interesting to see that when each of the planets moves through, in this case, Sagittarius, how the story of that invention further develops, like what anecdotes can you attach to it? Here moving forward to the next time that Uranus goes into Sagittarius, likely there'll be some other innovation to do with flight or some kind of technology. I mean, who knows where your humanity will be at technologically at that point? But yeah, hypothetically, at least, this storyline would continue following this model here. But anyways, let's move on. So basically, the conjunction is the seeding moment of any cycle, right? It's the moment where the themes of the cycle are seeded, which then develop throughout the planet's synodic cycle. So in 1821, Uranus and Neptune had a conjunction at 3 degrees of Capricorn. And a couple significant inventions were the electric motor and the railway train during this period. These technologies set the tone for what would be developed with Uranus in Aquarius, which took place between 1828 and 1836. So Aquarius is an air sign having to do with invention, information, networks, and the transmission of ideas, especially to do with the human collective. So during this period, Samuel Morse would develop both Morse code and the invention of the telegraph. So if anyone doesn't know what Morse code is, it's a system where different sounds are emitted. It's kind of like a buzzer kind of sound. And basically, different dots or dashes are indicated by how many times the sound is made. And in that, there's a code that so many of a specific combination equals a specific letter. And well, anyways, you can look into Morse code. I'm not going to try to explain it all right now, too. It's kind of hard to just verbally say it. You more have to see it and hear it to get it. But basically, it was as primitive of a technology as it may sound. I mean, ultimately, it's what got us to text messaging and instant messages we have now. But this is kind of the beginning of that. So Morse code, and then the telegraph, which is the technology of actually sending messages using this code. Then fast forward to the years 1834 to 1848, which Neptune was transiting Aquarius. On May 2nd of 1844, the first U.S. telegraph line is formally opened. So here we see Neptune is diffusing, making this technology more accessible to the masses. Again, building off what Uranus did in its transit prior in Aquarius. So the theme of communication being upgraded and the Neptunian dream of sending messages quickly is realized. Right, the telegraph transmitted messages through wires that traveled as code in the air, which is another signification of Aquarius. You know, wires on poles traveling through the air. You know, it's not quite what we have now, which is quite literally, you know, signals going through the air. But again, it was the beginning of that, and the fact that, you know, it has to do with information, the transmitting of information, which is all what air is about, and Aquarius in particular is all about ideas, you know, messages, you could say, being transmitted. Innovative things, you know, Aquarius is a very innovative sign, so all the more fitting to this. Okay, let's see. Uranus and Neptune transited Aquarius and then reconjoined several times before Pluto arrived in Aquarius, right? Due to what I said earlier of you know, the length of each of the transits. Of course, Uranus and Neptune can do a couple cycles before Pluto even gets around one time, right? Pluto takes 248 years. So Pluto is currently in Aquarius now, and it first ingressed in 2023 before retrograding back into Capricorn, but it's back now to stay for a good while, like 2049 maybe. I don't want to look it up, but moving on. In the previous cycle, Pluto transited the sign from 1777 to 1797. Pluto will likely work off the most recent Uranus-Neptune transit themes while in Aquarius now. And then Uranus was last in Aquarius between January of 1996 and March of 2003. And Neptune was last in Aquarius between late 1998 and early 2012. So with Uranus finishing this transit through Taurus, where it is now, at the very last degrees now, it first entered in 2018. So, you know, it's been a good 7 years. The themes that we've seen that have been indicated and that have played out are themes of wealth and economics, having been drastically shaken. I think that's undeniable. New currencies have emerged in the form of cryptocurrencies, which I know were already a thing before Uranus entered Taurus, but, you know, they've entered a more prominent place and actually entered the zeitgeist when they were kind of a fringe, kind of maybe undercurrent that not many people knew about, but now everybody's heard of cryptocurrencies. And, you know, they've become popularized too in their usage even, right? So it's definitely been a Uranus and Taurus signature. And then also that of material stability, which is a Taurus theme that has been challenged, but also inspired in new ways of making income via the internet. So take, for example, the digital nomad phenomenon, or drop shipping, content creating, or just working remotely in general. Those all became trends. There's lots of ways people work online or make money online. So that's been Uranus, you know, it is technology. In this case, Taurus is money. So put technology and money together and having that being transformed, revolutionized. Granted, that's going to continue with Uranus and Gemini because it doesn't finish. You know, a planet like Uranus, it leaving a sign, it doesn't mean that just everything is everything that it started and that sign just ends there or that it won't carry over. Uranus is going to continue to work those themes in the next sign. And then, of course, Neptune will come through Taurus in a few years now. Well, a couple decades, but uh, it'll continue to move and move these themes forward. Right, so Neptune will make its final ingress into Taurus on March 23rd of 2039. When it's finished, it just moved into Aries. So to think about Neptune and Taurus is kind of premature. And let's look at what Neptune and Aries does first. But already with Uranus leaving Taurus primed for Neptune, starting in 2039. These are a few things I came up with that may be some signature things we can expect. So we will likely see a building off of the themes begun during the Uranus and Taurus transit, right? So likely the universalization of currency as a form of exchange or transaction in general, if not way before. And I realize that this is already kind of a thing. But if it takes till 2039 for it to become the only form of exchange, we have over a decade of history to live through to create before that. But just putting together what Neptune could signify in Taurus based off what Uranus already started. That's one thing I've came to mind. So also a change to money. What I mean by that is just the money changing in a drastic way. It's already not, some places they don't accept physical money, but maybe just even the concept of what money is changing. Right now it has a specific meaning. It may have a whole completely different meaning by this time. Again, it's too early to tell. So this is all speculation. I'm by no means saying that this is what's going to be, is what I'm trying to say. It's just Neptune could also mean or indicate dissolving of what is considered to be of value. So the entire concept of what value is. A dissolving of materialism or the concept of material stability. This could also be emotional and mental stability, which let's just see what the next decade brings about. I think a lot of really heavy things humanity is still about to live through. So I think that's all going to be very challenged. So by the time Neptune's done with his transit in Aries, that may be very, very relevant in a whole way that we can't understand right now. So a far more creative way or form of creating wealth and living through and just living in a whole different way that's focused more on creativity, because Neptune is very much focused on that kind of these extraordinary, fantastical ways of thinking and dreaming. So, in terms of lifestyle, perhaps. Though, of course, it could end up being an illusory bubble, because it's the double-edged sword of Neptune. It's as much as it's fantastical dreams, oftentimes it's also illusions. So, something to keep in mind. Granted, this still is very far off in the future, right? And entails things that we can't even imagine yet, probably. So, purely speculation. Still a very long ways away. Pluto will not ingress into Taurus now until 2097. So I'm not going to speculate on what that entails. As I wrote here, it will likely also build off the themes of Uranus and Neptune and Taurus, adding an intense power complex, weaponizing and bringing about a transformative quality to those themes. All right, so the more relevant part here to us, because we're literally about a few weeks away from Uranus making its final ingress into Gemini. April 26th of 2026 is the day of the ingress. will be lasting through May 22nd of 2033. So some major themes for Uranus in Gemini is the great split. Gemini is the twins, so there's always two of everything, things that come in pairs, usually opposites. So mainstream society, the way I see it, will become completely digitalized and robotic on one hand, and then also the resistance movement will create an alternative. So alternative communities, which will be implementing alternative ways of living that are non-digitalized. So this is very much like the off-grid movement, uh, really taking off. There's people that have been doing it for quite a while, preparing already, and that's great. I mean, I've been doing something similar. And then, there's some people that may just jump on board last minute and have to play catch up, but nonetheless, they'll still be on that side because it really is going to come down to having to take sides on some level to survive. Either you're with the technocracy and the whole digitalization of reality and life in general, or you're going to stick with the organic, uh, you know, reclaim your humanity and become self-sustainable in communities because there's also going to be a big communitarian, I think, aspect to this, especially with Pluto and Aquarius too, which is none of these planets are working in isolation. Pluto and Aquarius is cooperating with both Saturn and Neptune and Aries via the sextile, and then also to Uranus and Gemini, as I'll get into a little bit later. Um, so there's the resistance movement, right? And then also knowledge, like having knowledge, all kinds of knowledge, really, and skills, information are going to become the most important or most valuable forms of currency because money is kind of going to become irrelevant in certain communities. But knowing how to do things, things to survive, how to build things, how to grow things, how to fix things. Yeah, just being intelligent, being resourceful. That's going to be vital. And Gemini is all about that. Gemini is a sign of intelligence, of information, of communicating and teaching skills as well. So this all will probably become the case further along when money loses its value, as it's likely going to. At least paper money will just lose its value, and it just will be worthless. And so if you're not on board with the digital technology, you're going to have to find another way to trade and get goods. So currency is going to become something completely different from what it is now. So also the themes of storytelling and writing, intelligent discourse, making a comeback on some level. Like the AI slop, pretty much, hopefully there being some counter movement to that, in terms of writing and creativity. That could be one side of it. Sure, certainly AI is going to continue to do its thing, and there's people that are still on board using that. But there's I think a movement that is just not going to go along with that, and basically, hopefully, create a sort of a renaissance for writing, art, and communication. So, a few more themes are war from the humanists upon the organic human, which I already kind of alluded to. Chip implants becoming more common. The potential attempt to shut down the internet. The dissent movement organizing offline, so all the dissidents. So information may be being shared via USBs that are passed around, files added to it, and kind of having like libraries of information offline that way. The revolutionary spirit being reawakened, because that's what Uranus does, right? It's the awakener, it's the revolutionary. It has that very invigorating, empowering, inspiring feel to it, particularly with youth. So there's the potential of a military draft being implemented in some countries. United States, perhaps, because I think the last time Uranus was in Gemini, there was one. Uh, and I've already heard of other countries that are implementing it, with the ongoing wars and, other wars that want to be started, perhaps. Uh, uh, Mars will be transiting for a time, also in Gemini later this year. So even this year, we could already begin to see that right off the bat. Uh, in early July, actually, Mars will be in Gemini. Anyway, so innovation and aviation, because Uranus has to do with aviation, another theme. Going back to our first example, right? So Uranus, though that was in Sagittarius, here in the opposing sign to that aspect, to that chart of the Wright brothers, the opposition to that point, 25 Sagittarius could be interesting to look at when Uranus gets to 25 Gemini, and just see what comes about maybe in developments in aviation around that time, near the end of the transit. So also reforms to travel, both in the industry and also maybe requirements to travel. I mean, having to do with specific kind of passports being required. Who knows? Then trade disruptions also due to military conflicts, which we're already seeing. So probably Uranus and Gemini is just going to further move that along, at least for a period of time, and then maybe it will be resolved. But yeah, that's likely going to be the case. Uh, so some additional dynamics here. Uranus will be working with Pluto in Aquarius via a sign-based trine for the entire Gemini transit, as well as with Saturn and Neptune in Aries via the sign-based sextile. As I said, none of the planets, the outer planets, work in isolation during their transits. And they're all here in harmonious aspects. So we'll also have the sign-based sextile to Jupiter in Leo for 1 year, beginning on June 30th, 2026. A sextile to Uranus in Gemini. So collectively, the three outer planets plus Saturn will be the significant archetypes giving shape to this new world, the new world that's emerging now. Essentially, after Uranus enters Gemini, that'll be the final piece, the final archetype, taking its seat, so to speak, in its new place for the duration of this next, at least the ignition of this next era, because Uranus will be there for 7 years. Neptune will be in Aries for about 15 years, I think, and Pluto will be in Aquarius for about 20 years. So it's quite a long time. All three planets will not be leaving the signs that they're entering now. We'll have Saturn till 2027, also in Aries. Jupiter, like I said, for 1 year, but pretty much these outer planets are going to stop moving, or they'll continue to move, right? But they're not leaving the sign that they're currently in. We've had a lot of these retrogrades with planets entering a sign, retrograding back, finishing their previous transit and moving in. So with this final ingress of Uranus, we'll put an end to that for the most part. So then basically fire and air and fire are going to be the predominant elements with planets pretty much at all times. So this is the intellect, knowledge, and ideas as air, and action, passion, conviction as fire. On an individual level, Gemini, Sun, Moon, or Rising natives will feel the Uranian impact most intensely. Also in any of the angular houses. So the first, of course, because that's where the rising sign is, but also the 4th house, the 7th house, and the 10th house. Gemini is any of those houses for you. Likely, even if it's not your sun or moon, you'll feel the impact of that transit a little more acutely. For some, this may feel disruptive and though caught off guard. And then for some people, they may welcome it as something fresh, something liberating, exciting. I'm looking forward to it personally. I think it's going to be a really positive transit. Uh, I think Uranus in Gemini has a lot of very interesting potentials, and it's a sign that matches very well with the archetype of Uranus. So, whereas with Taurus being kind of antithetical, being slow, this transit has felt very slow and not very harmonizing because Uranus doesn't really do so well in Taurus. But now in Gemini, it's like coming into an environment that it can thrive in, and I think we'll be seeing a lot of bigger. Well, we'll see progress in leaps and bounds, however you want to look at progress, but I think it really will be bringing a lot of novel things as we already have gone through. But I really do think that it's a positive indicator in terms of the people becoming empowered with this split that I was talking about of the digital crowd, the technocrats versus the organic humans. I think that Uranus is serving to empower the organic. Uh, so I think that there's hope that we can hold the line, and as difficult as reality may get, we'll have that innovative spirit of resistance to withstand whatever we have to face as a people. So that was the presentation. Hopefully that was insightful on some level. Thank you for listening, and always remember that the heavens above are within you. As above, so below, as within, as without.